You can become generally more attractive
Yes.
by doing certain things. You talk about appearance. You can increase your fashion and fitness. This is something we all can improve, no matter how many eyes you have or noses you have.
It's pretty simple. Like it's not very hard. And honestly, like men have it way easier than women on that front. Like it's crazy. Like you just, I don't know, like take a shower and like fucking comb your hair and put on a decent shirt and like you're halfway there.
Hello and welcome to the Psychology Podcast. I am Dr. Scott Barry Kaufman, a cognitive scientist interested in plumbing the depths of human potential. In this episode, I talk with best-selling author and my friend, Mark Manson, about what women really want in a man. In addition to writing multiple best-selling books such as The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck and Everything is Fucked, Mark has a past as a successful dating coach. Mark put a lot of his insights into dating and seduction in his 2011 book, Models: Attract Women Through Honesty. The contents of that book are the focus of today's really fun and enlightening conversation. So without further ado, I bring you Mark Manson.
Sunday podcast. This feels like,
What does it feel like?
it feels more casual.
Yeah, kind of super fast.
You know, like more chill. You know, we're off the clock.
Yeah.
I'm off the clock. I don't know about you, but
I am off the clock. I've gone down the rabbit hole of your prior life.
oh boy. All right. I'm
in,
ready.
In the seduction community. What was it called? The pickup artist with the seduction community?
Seduction. I think it was seduction community prior to the pickup artist community. And then these days, I don't know what it's called.
I think they've rebranded.
Like Red Pill or Manosphere or something.
But I really want to have a really nerdy conversation with you at a really high level about whether nice guys really finish last. You know, and there's multiple ways you can phrase the question. You could also do the inverse and say, do assholes really get ahead, you know, in the dating realm? And, you know, maybe they're both opposite questions or maybe they're parallel questions. But this question about, we know for a fact throughout the course of millennia, there are many, many self-perceived nice guys who have been feeling like they are being left out of the, you know, and understanding that and understanding like what's really going on. You know, what do women really want? Now, maybe some listeners would say, well, I should ask a woman that, not ask, you know, Mark Manson. But you've done a deep dive into this at one point in your life and you had a lot of experience. I mean, you went out there and put yourself on the line.
Yeah, I was a professional dating coach for men for 4 years, about 4 or 5 years. I worked with hundreds of men, wrote hundreds of articles, wrote a book, which is still quite popular today.
It's called Models.
Attract Women Through Honesty.
Attract Women Through Honesty. So you put yourself on the line where you were okay being rejected. You were okay learning what women want and learning that not all women are the same too. That's something you learned.
Also true.
Right? Different women want different things at different ages. So there's a lot of nuance here. You know, a major theme of your book is neediness. Okay. Yes. How do you even define neediness? And why is that so important when you're trying to attract someone? And
I define neediness as a prioritization of other people's opinions about you over your own opinion about you. So it's if I am, and the way that actually manifests itself in behavior is that if I'm prioritizing your opinion of me over my own, I will censor my own thoughts, or I will censor what I actually think, and I will say and do the things that I think you will want to see from me. And
it never goes well, does it?
No, it's and this, I mean, the sad thing is, like, that is, I think a lot of people don't realize, like, a lot of people just think that that's what dating is, what a relationship is, what friendship is, and it's not. So that's how I mean, to be fair, I wanted to, when I was writing my book, I kind of distilled everything I felt about attraction down to this concept, but I didn't know of a label for it. So I kind of just invented one, and neediness just struck me as like a very logical and obvious way to describe it.
There's something very human here that you're hitting on. It's not just like women are attuned to neediness. There seems to be a general principle here. The more needy you are about something in general, the more you tend to push people away. It's a downward spiral in a way.
It's repulsive in all social contexts. So yeah. So like, imagine. I mean, I imagine as a guy, like you go to a friend's house to watch a football game, and there's a guy there who's like sitting too close to you, who's like smiling, asking you all these weird questions, you know, laughing at all, like way too hard at all your jokes. Like your immediate instinct is going to be to get away from that person, you know? So it's
I don't want to laugh at you now.
No, but it's just a commonality of just human interaction. But I think there's a lot of subtlety to it. Like what I just described is like a very overt and obvious example of it, but it happens on a lot of subtle levels as well. And I think particularly with dating, those subtleties get amplified quite a bit.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And, a lot of what we're talking about here is that attraction in trying to, and a lot of it, let's be honest, is overcoming fear of rejection.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of self-perceived nice guys who are terrified of rejection.
Yes.
They would rather not talk to a woman ever if that means that they may be rejected. Do you have any tips on how to kind of overcome that fear? Is it just like getting out there and doing it over and over?
Yeah. I mean, rejection is just a fact of life. So the sooner you can get comfortable with it, the better.
You've been rejected in the past?
Like, dude. Thousands of times. I mean, I don't know if it's actually.
You're like, maybe not thousands.
But like, it just.
Wow, okay.
An insane amount.
You've been slapped.
Yeah. It's the act of trying to protect yourself from rejection is what makes you unattractive. So when you cater your thoughts and feelings to prevent rejection from another person, you make yourself less attractive and interesting to that person. And so one of the concepts I talk about in the book is that attraction is ultimately, it's polarizing. Like the things that are going to make you most attractive to some people are also going to get you rejected most often by other people. So you can't play the middle ground. Like if you like to maximize your dating experience, you have to basically go all in on the things that are going to make you attractive to the partners that you desire and or that are going to make you happy, and then accept that there's going to be a certain amount of rejection that's just going to naturally come as a collateral damage of that.
Yeah, so it's one thing to cognitively, but there's another thing, to actually get through the experience, because it's not a pleasant experience. But a lot of, it seems like there's different kinds of classes of nice guys. There's like the entitled nice guy, the nice, I'm just making up labels on the spot, but there's the type of nice, they're like, I'm such a nice guy and I don't understand why I'm not getting laid all the time. I should be getting laid all the time because I'm such a nice guy. Well, that's the entitled nice guy.
Yeah.
I think there's like the nerdy nice guy. I think there's the well-intentioned nice guy who is just generally baffled and confused why it seems like they're always in the friend zone. I know some people like this. I feel like they're always in the friend zone, and the friend is always going after the seeming asshole, and they're like, hello, what about, they're like, why can't I find a nice guy? And the guy's like, oh, hello, right? So I think that's maybe a different class of nice guy. Something that it seems important to recognize here is, we're not just attracted as humans. There's like a human issue here. It's not just about women. None of us are just attracted to a nice person, right? Like even from the male perspective, if you think about the women you're attracted to, it's not just because they're nice.
It's like the most baseline, lowest bar that you can clear is just being a nice person. So there needs to be something else going on. Yeah, for sure.
So that's important for our well-meaning nice guys who are listening to this episode. I want them to think about this.
And by the way, the entitled nice guy, like that's the harsh truth for that guy, is that it's like, dude, being nice doesn't earn you an award. Like you're not gonna get a medal because you were like polite to somebody. Like that's just called being a decent human being, right? Like it's being a nice person isn't. If the purpose is to get you things, then you're not actually a nice person. You're kind of a piece of shit. And to the nerdy nice guy, I think the nerdy nice guy, it's mostly just being a little bit out of touch with their own intentions and being, not developed, like they haven't learned how to like speak up and state what they want clearly and communicate what they want clearly. And then I think there's kind of a third class of nice guy, which is just kind of clueless, like just has no experience, has never been on a date, like has never actually just like, tried to get out there at all. So
experience sounds like it's so important, and you went through a lot of experience.
Yeah.
Hopefully we got recorded earlier where we talked about your background. I think that was within the first 4 minutes.
So my previous career, I was a dating coach for about 5 years. I worked with hundreds of men, both one-on-one and in seminars. Took guys out to bars and coffee shops.
You did that.
And malls.
You went out in the scene.
Oh yeah.
Wow, you did all that. Okay, did you do the earpiece thing where
No.
you talk to them? They do that sometimes in these pickup trainings.
No, I was too broke to do that. Back then. No, I would just take guys to bars and talk to girls with them and give them feedback and, help them out, take them to the mall, help them buy a decent shirt, basic stuff.
And have you seen some real big transformations?
Oh, for sure. One of the really cool things is every once in a while I'll run into an old client and, like they'll come to an event or something. I've had a couple guys like bring their wives to events and just be like, hey.
That's kind of beautiful.
Yeah, it's really cool.
To know that you played some part in that.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
So you say things like, ask yourself this: why would you want to be intimate with someone who doesn't appreciate you? Why would you ever settle for such a person? Because she's hot? Come on, have a little more self-respect. Have some higher standards.
Yeah.
That causes a consciousness shift in a lot of nice guys, I think. From, oh, I gotta perform and impress them, to, oh, I wonder if they're gonna impress me. Now, that's a real consciousness shift. And that seems like a game-changing kind of mental shift in approaching the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think men who are needy, they don't consider that. Like, this is like, I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a second.
I love Mark on his soapbox. I love it.
So, obviously, like there's a lot that is said about objectifying women, how it's bad for women, which is true, right? You shouldn't objectify women. What doesn't get said is that objectifying women is also bad for men, because if you are basing, like, your romantic relationship is such a large part of your life, and your attention, your emotional energy, your mental energy, and if you are basically saying that none of that matters as long as she's hot, like it's like she could be a bitch, you could be miserable with her, you could not trust her, you could not feel respected by her, but if she's hot, you'll tolerate all of that shit, right? Just because you think she's hot, right? So it's like a man is degrading himself in the process as well.
And I don't think she'll respect you.
Or she'll just take advantage of you. I mean, well, it depends. If she has integrity, she won't respect you, and then she won't date you. And if she doesn't have integrity, she'll just take advantage of you.
I really went down a deep rabbit hole in studying your work and the work of pickup artists and the seduction community, whatever the fuck they call themselves these days. It just seems like there's a certain factor now. I did a factor analysis of the kinds of themes that they're obsessed with.
Sure.
So one of them is coming across as creepy. Fear rejection is one of them, but just coming across as creepy is a major fear of a lot of these guys that get these trainings. But in my perception, a lot of them look creepy when they're doing their pickup artist bit. To me, that looks creepy, but it's not.
I thought a lot about what creepiness is.
What is creepiness?
So creepiness is, I mean, there is a physical attraction element of it. Like, physically attractive guys can definitely get away with more creepy behavior. The thing that makes creepiness creepy is that it's incongruent behavior, right? So it's essentially when you are saying one thing but being another way, right? It's like a guy who's like telling you how much money he has when he's like, he's dressed in like, hobo clothes. Like there's like an incongruence in somewhere in their identity. Like what they're portraying is not lining up in some way or another. And I think creepiness, it can happen. I think it's a signal. Like I think the reason it evolved is that it's a signal for women of manipulation and untrustworthiness. And I think, to your point, I think the reason kind of pickup artist tactics come across as creepy is because they're fundamentally manipulative and dishonest. And so they trigger the creepiness red flag in a lot of women. But I think it can happen with men who are also unaware of their own intentions and desires and impulses, who they will, in their head, they're being honest when they express something. But the woman can see like something's off here.
Something's off.
Yeah, like he says this thing, but he seems this other way.
See, but that's a profound insight, because I think a lot of men are kind of conditioned, or kind of think the way the world works is they'll be more successful if they hide their intentions, right? Like, oh, can't show that I'm sexually interested, gotta like make pretty. But that in some ways that actually makes you more creepy.
Well, no, but there's
an interesting paradox there.
That's ultimately why I landed on just the prescription of honesty.
Yeah.
Because honesty, even if you get rejected, even if you fail, even if you don't get the girl of your dreams, you're not gonna be creepy. You're not gonna be manipulative. You're still gonna have integrity, and you'll be able to approach women and try to, approach your dating life in a way that you can feel proud of, and that you can feel you can maintain your self-respect.
I get it. I mean, I feel like I see you. And what you were, underneath a lot of this comes down to just basic confidence, self-respect, self-worth, not coming at it from a sense of neediness, not coming from a sense of vulnerable narcissism, which is a topic that I study, where like, I think a lot of neediness comes from vulnerable narcissism. We'll edit out all that sounds, but a lot of it does seem to come from that vulnerable narcissism, not, there is grandiose narcissism, but I also think you see a lot in the pickup artist community, there's a vulnerable kind of narcissism.
Well, we've talked about this before, how pickup is essentially just grandiose narcissist teaching vulnerable narcissist how to be grandiose narcissist.
Yeah, and see,
like
that's right. Yeah.
That's the supply and demand.
Yeah, that's right.
And see, grandiose narcissists will actually get laid by women who are vulnerable narcissists. So like, it's
that's super interesting.
Like,
yeah,
there is an attraction there that happens across the narcissism spectrum.
Yeah. And vulnerable narcissism in women is highly correlated with borderline personality disorder, but maybe we don't want to go there. But there's something there.
I'm not surprised, and that's why when you also in these communities, the guys who do get laid a bunch and date a ton of women, like they have the worst fucking horror stories about, like, this is like ultimately, and I think I've talked about this in models, is like you ultimately attract what you are. And
such a good insight.
And it's
yes.
So if you are narcissistic, selfish, manipulative, untrustworthy, that's the woman you're going to end up with. And you can kind of fake your way to appearing attractive in the short term. And guess what? You're going to end up with women who fake their way to being attractive in the short term. So it's like there's a parallelism that happens.
Well, have you seen the hot matrix, the hot crazy matrix? You don't think that's a thing? You don't think that's true?
I think that's a perfect example of
a story that
No. I think that's a perfect example of grandiose narcissism attracts grandiose narcissism. Or narcissism attracts narcissism. Manipulation attracts manipulation.
Really?
Yeah.
You think that's a good example of that? That explains why.
Because it's the hot, crazy woman. Like, this gets into the whole tangent of like what's hot. And
You're right. That's a good point too.
right, like it's if your standard of hot is like the porn star, you know, fake eyelashes, fake boobs.
That's my standard.
Yeah, fake ass, fake everything.
Yeah. I like the
Guess
fake
what?
ass. I like the fake ass.
Guess what? Like the women that look like that.
No, you're right.
Yeah, they look like that for a reason.
No,
So-
you're right. In reality, before people get the wrong idea about me, I'm usually the one. I'm usually the one who's falling in love with the girl. They're almost like, why her? You know, and I'm like, she's so quirky and cute. You know, like I love the nerdy, you know, big glasses and freckles. And
There you
that's
go.
kind of my type. So,
Nice.
you know, you say the exact words you say are far less important than your intentions and level of anxiety. So this is a formula. I really want to nerd out with you today. That is a great formula here. You're saying that the anxiety part, I think, is correlated with the neediness part of the equation.
Sure.
But then what, you know, the intentionality being more important than the words. If you could unpack that a little for me, because you have this whole story where you went up to women and your friend went up to him and said, "Can I pee in your butt?" Now, doesn't that illustrate this point you're trying to make?
Oh my God, the pee in your butt story.
Am I wrong? Yeah.
No, I mean it's this is one thing that I just learned going out and speaking to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women, is that ultimately, like the line,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's who you are, and it's the attitude that you show up with.
I would also add in the context.
In context, absolutely. You have to be socially aware, but it's much more about your identity, who you present yourself as, and then the attitude that behind it. Like the words themselves are like you can give the best line in the world to the neediest dude, and he's still gonna get rejected left, right, and center. So
It's a great point.
you know, back to the intention thing, it's the intention, it's the why you said it. It's not what you say, it's why you said it. You know, and it's if you can say anything, and if you're looking for a reaction, it's going to come across as needy. It's potentially going to come across as creepy. If you say something and you're just like, fuck it, having a good time, having a laugh, expressing your thoughts, you know, if there's an unconditionality to it, and by that what I mean is that you're not looking for a reaction, then it's either she's going to pick up what you're putting down and she's going to love it, or she's going to say no thank you and move on, and then you know, she's doing you a favor because she's not vibing with you.
Or
So,
throw a drink in your face. Yeah.
I mean, if you're an asshole, yeah, she might do that.
Yeah. Well, even if you're not an asshole, sometimes wires get crossed. You know, sometimes you can have the best intentions, and you can't control someone else's perception of it. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, shit happens.
Yeah. You actually say allow yourself to be creepy. So you know, like you say, like things happen.
You have to understand that like you're never going to communicate yourself perfectly all the time. So
You know, you can have that's the only point I wanted to make there is you can have the best of intentions and still be horribly rejected. And to be able to not take that personally, also to not be mad at the person, like in some sort of entitled sort of way, Hey, there's something I did want to bring up, and that's this idea of like, can you be too cool for school? As a lot of this seems to make a lot of sense in the early stages of a relationship, but like, there are times in a relationship where you really are needy on you're human, right? And honesty is being needy, and let's say you get sick and you need your partner to take care of you for a certain part, or let's say you're starting to notice an imbalance in liking, and you're starting to feel within yourself a little bit needier because you're invested in the relationship, so I'm trying to reconcile that, so is a lot of this advice more about like attracting someone who's new than like being in a relationship over many years?
it is primarily about attraction, although I would say I do think neediness is important as a principle throughout a relationship. Again, as you pointed out, like shit happens in life. There are moments of weakness, moments of insecurity. And I think in a long-term relationship, there's a lot of leeway to like support each other. But I think if there's ever neediness for an extended period of time, that results in kind of an imbalance within the relationship. So I do think it still holds as a guiding principle within a long-term relationship, with the understanding that there are going to be like short-term moments here and there that one person or the other is going to be in a very like vulnerable position.
It seems like demographics are super important. You see a lot of guys with midlife crisis, going on, and then they're only going for like the hot, 20s, in 20s, and they're like, why am I getting rejected? It seems like knowing your target audience and what's going to be a real authentic fit seems to be a really important part of this story, right?
For sure. I think men tend to. The men live in one of two different fantasy worlds when it comes to what I would call like identity or lifestyle. The first fantasy world is that none of it should matter, that if you are like charming enough and charismatic enough and have all the right lines and jokes, that you should be able to like hook up with any girl anywhere under any circumstance, whatever, like, which is just fucking fantasy world. That's not realistic. The second fantasy that men have is that that lifestyle and identity, it basically all just boils down to like money and maybe how tall you are, which is also bullshit. Like, those things matter, but they're a relatively small.
How much money are we talking?
I mean, just money in general. Like it's a relatively small amount of the pie, and it's. I mean, ultimately, what matters is the life that you've built for yourself. You
call it lifestyle,
your occupation, your interests, your friend group, what you like to do on the weekends, your relationship with your family, like the city you live in, like all these things are huge. Your age, all these things are big factors. Your religious or ethnic background, like all these things are factors. And I think it's important that not just men, everybody is realistic about what are the demographics that I'm going to naturally appeal to, and what are the demographics that I'm naturally not going to appeal to.
Being honest with yourself.
Be honest with yourself, and then just play within those demographics. Like, don't. And I, back when I coached, I used to run into this occasionally. Get the 40 or 45-year-old divorced guy, midlife crisis, wants to start going out to nightclubs and talking to college girls, and like wants me to give him the line that's going to get him to hook up with a college girl. I'm like, I'm sorry, dude, but there's not a line. Like, there's just no line. Like, you're in the wrong place. And besides, it's like, if there is a girl here who's willing to hook up with a guy twice her age, you probably don't need a line for her. Like, she's just,
that's her thing.
It's her thing, or she's there for, whatever, the car, the benefits. So it's I think this is why, the subtitle of my book is Attract Women Through Honesty. The honesty is not just about the honesty with the women, it's the honesty with yourself.
Love that.
Because if you lie to yourself, the repercussions of that are ultimately unattractive.
Oh man, I love that. Radical, drop the mic there. I'm all about radical self-honesty. Yeah. I think this is why we're friends. We're both pretty radically self-honest about each other. And have the ideas of your book changed at all since you've written it in light of the MeToo sort of era? Because there's some things you say in there that are a little like MeToo questionable, such as you have a thing you say, keep expressing your interest and keep going for it. Being assertive, you even say dominance is attractive to women.
Sure.
Up until the point they say no.
Yep.
Keep going for it. Now, you say that in the book. Has your thinking about that changed in light of the last 5-6 years of this cultural consciousness change?
I haven't. The last time, so I did a revision of the book in 2016.
Oh.
That's the last time I did a revision of it. And I think the Me Too stuff was just starting around then. But I remember that revision, I kind of went through with that in mind. There's probably, like, I originally wrote the book when I was 29.
Wow.
No, 27. And then that revision, I was 32. So it's like, I'm sure there's probably a more delicate and nuanced way to put. There's some passages there. I'm sure there's more delicate and nuanced ways to put it. But I think ultimately I stand by the principle, which is you should express what you want. You should, if she doesn't say no, feel free to continue expressing. I just think there's a certain level, as long as there's respect there, as long as you're not being pushy or, intimidating her. I think there's a certain, maybe like if I did go back and revise it, I would probably revise like an awareness around her emotional state. Cause I think a lot of women, they don't feel free to say no, or they are too insecure to say no. And so I think there's like, it's important to, as a man, to try to be aware of that.
Well, women are complex. Men throughout the millennia have been trying to understand. There's some famous quotes like from like famous Nobel Prize winners. They're like, I understand the universe, but women forget about it, So you do point out some of the complexities of women in your book. You point out how it might not seem rational, but a lot of women, you can say something that gets them so mad at you. Polarization, you say, is a good thing. And so you say, well, look, don't count yourself out if you've made a woman mad at you, like she could actually come back and, it could work out. So I'm trying to reconcile that within this sort of MeToo era, but there's something really interesting that you're pointing on there,
It depends what she's mad about.
That's true.
My response to that would be, the opposite of attraction is not anger. The opposite of attraction is indifference.
Right. So why is polarizing women such a positive thing to do?
Polarization, it's kind of like if you make the decision to be honest about your thoughts and feelings, you have to understand that sometimes people aren't going to like your thoughts and feelings. Sometimes they're going to be upset by them. Sometimes they're going to disagree with you. Sometimes they're going to want to argue with you. And I think it's important to understand that that's not necessarily a bad thing. The same way you argue with family members or you get upset with your dad, or, it's part of, a natural part of intimacy is feeling heightened emotion, both positive and negative. So I think as long as the reason she's mad isn't because you're a piece of shit who like lied to her or did something unethical, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'll give you a really simple, kind of practical example of this that I think probably illustrates why polarization is not only natural in a healthy relationship, but it's also like good. So my wife, this started when we were dating. Like many women, she would spend a lot of time getting ready to go out on a date night or whatever. And she'd try on some new outfit, and then she'd come out and she'd be like, how do I look? And if she didn't look good, I would say, I don't think you look good. And
she said that to you?
What?
She said to you don't look good?
No. She would get ready to go on a date, and she'd put on her whole outfit and everything. Yeah. And then she'd come out like most women tend to do. As they say, how do I look?
Oh, you have to lie.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to.
99%
of my experience.
99% of what men would just like say, you look beautiful, like don't even think about it. I make a practice of telling her if I don't think she looks good, I tell her I don't, I'm like, I don't like that dress. I don't think it looks good. The first year or so that we were together, she would get so fucking pissed off.
Yeah, women don't like that.
No, she really doesn't like that. And so, but I was like, you asked me how you look, and this is what I'm not going to lie to you, right? So she would get upset. We'd have the first year or so, we'd have like little arguments and stuff about it. But a funny thing started happening after a while, which is if she asked me a question, she says, how does this look? Or how do I look tonight? How does this outfit look? And I say, you look fucking spectacular. Now that means something. Like, because now she knows I'm being honest. She knows that I'm willing to say the other thing. So when I say the good thing, she's like super, super happy. And another funny thing happened too, after a while, and I would argue this is healthy as well, is after another couple of years, we reached a point where, she'd come out of the closet, or the bathroom or whatever, and she'd be like, how do I look? And I'd say, I don't like the outfit. Doesn't look great. And she'd be like, well, I don't care. I like it. And then we go
Good
out
for
anyway.
her.
Exactly.
That's her prioritizing her own.
Exactly. So I think that polarization of response is actually healthy. It's because it also enables the person you're with to stop being needy to themselves as well.
Right. And you're encouraging authentic, honest conversations. If I say something that you disagree with and you're like, Scott, I don't agree with that, like, I'm not going to fall to pieces, like that's a good conversation. I don't want to be around someone who says everything I say is brilliant, or do I? So you say, I strongly believe in the idea of fuck yes or no. This shows the early days of Mark Manson, by the way, and his the word fuck. But yeah, I really think that's my philosophy too, right? Like, if someone's not interested, like, move on. Like, I think a lot of nice guys get stuck, right? I think there was a term for that in the pickup artist days, where you get stuck on one person. I think there was a term they had for it. I'm forgetting what it is right now. The average frustrated chump or something. This is what they were so mean.
They were really mean.
Referring to nice guys.
They were really mean.
Average frustrated chump, gets stuck on one person. Yeah. But I think there's something really important about that, right? Is like, is knowing when to move on and being graceful about that.
Well, again, think about it. If a woman is not interested, yet you keep waiting around for someone who's not interested, spending valuable time of your own life waiting and hoping, like, what does that say about your view of yourself? Like, it suggests that you don't think very highly of yourself, that you don't value your own time very highly. You could be using that time to go out and meet other women. So it's ultimately, again, kind of with the objectification thing, it comes back to, it's a self-respect issue.
So the friend zone is I've been so fascinated in understanding that. I think that a lot of guys, a lot of nice guys, this relates to what you were just saying. They think that if they stay in there long enough, someday the woman's gonna just magically be like, oh, it was you all along that I loved.
Yeah.
But I think there's some nuance there, because I think that there's this terrible idea that no woman can just be a friend, that the guys and girls can't be friends, that every woman that you're friends with, if you're not sleeping with them, then you're in the friend zone. And I abhor that idea, because I have a lot of female friends that I think I have a wonderful friendship, and it's very meaningful, and I generally don't want to sleep with them,
I mean, that's just the objectification again.
That's what it is.
It's just seeing women as.
But I see that a lot in the pickup artist community. I remember back in the day, in my 20s, when the game came out and I tried my hand at all that stuff, all of it felt very uncomfortable to me. And one thing was, like, I remember I would go out, in the scene. They call it whatever their term for the real world. They're like, we're now going to the real world, and the guys would be like yelling at me. They'd be like, dude, why are you talking to her and not escalating it, And I'm like, well, actually, this girl's just cool. Like, I'm not trying to sleep. Believe it or not, I'm actually talking to a girl that I'm not trying to sleep with. They couldn't understand that concept. Yeah. So I don't know what my point is, but I guess my point is that like, let's define what it means to be in the friend zone, because I don't think you're automatically in the friend zone if you have a really cool friendship.
The friend zone is when you are attracted to a woman and you want to have a romantic relationship with her, but she just sees you as a friend.
Yes.
And doesn't want to bring you out of the friend zone.
Well, I think a lot of guys can really resonate with being in the friend zone and being gutted over it. When they seem, in their perception, they seem to see the girl constantly dating jerks, for instance, But is there any way out of the friend zone? What are your thoughts on the friend zone?
I don't think about the friend zone a whole lot. Like,
well, you're married, so I'm glad to hear that.
I just, like, I don't, to me, it was always really simple of like, look, you shouldn't wait around for somebody who doesn't want to be with you, like, period. Just, if she doesn't want to be with you, don't wait around. Get on with your life. if you want to stay friends with her, that's fine. Be friends with her, but don't be friends with her because you're waiting that she'll like one day hopefully change her mind. You know, so it's like
Love that.
I don't know. There's like a lot of brouhaha over friend zone stuff that I always had a ton of female friends, and yeah, sure, some of them I like totally wanted to hook up with, and some of them I didn't. Some of them I just really liked hanging out with. So it's like, I don't know, whatever. Women are people. Like I do find it really discouraging and disconcerting when men A, don't have female friends, and B, don't think you can have female friends.
It bothers me. It's a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, you were like, I find it funny too, because then I'm like, well, no wonder you're so fucking confused about women, because you never spend any time around them.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, it's like, how do you think you're gonna like relate to women if you don't spend time with them?
That's so true. You do argue there's 3 types of women.
It's like there's 3 types. There's I think it's interested, uninterested, and neutral.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And if she's uninterested, so if she's neutral, and like a neutral woman is just somebody who like you don't know if she's attracted to you or not.
She might not even know if she's attracted to you, right? Yeah.
You should you should pursue her until you find out. And then once you find out, she goes into interested or uninterested categories. If she's uninterested, you should stop pursuing her, full stop. Let it go.
Yeah.
And then if she's interested, great.
So it's important to understand this framework.
It's important because I think a lot of guys waste a ton of time trying to make sure that every woman they meet ends up being interested, and that is just backfires, or they try to convert women from uninterested into interested. And it's just like, I think that framework was just, to put it as simply as possible, if she's neutral, she should remain neutral as little as possible. Like, you should make your interest clear as soon as possible. And as soon as you make your interest clear, it should polarize her. And if she goes into the uninterested side, let it go. And if you want to be friends, you can be friends. But like, don't sit there and try to like game her and try to, get her all worked up or whatever.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. But you also do really make a case for going for it. And I'm not saying that's incompatible with what you just said, but I think there is another side of it where you're like, no, like sometimes they'll be more attracted to you if you show that you're attracted to them. You say, quote, the biggest aphrodisiac in the world is someone who likes you, genuinely likes you. A woman's desire is to be desired, but it has to be genuine desire. It can't be I'll desire you as long as you boost my ego and impress my coworkers kind of desire.
Yeah.
So I guess keeping that framework in mind is good on the one hand, but also if you have limited information on where they're at in terms of their interest in you, let's encourage guys to go for it, respectfully and honestly.
That's if you don't know if they're interested or not, if they're in that neutral category, then you have to go for it until you find out. And then if they're uninterested, then you stop.
Well, it feels like it doesn't need to be said, but it does have to be said. Yeah, it does.
Unfortunately,
this is why we have the MeToo movement. Yes. So in the remaining time we have an interview, let's offer some hope to nice guys who are really struggling, and you really believe at the end of the day that anyone can be attractive. You actually make a distinction between good looking and being attractive, and you really have a lot of hope that everyone can increase their attractiveness.
Everybody's attracted to somebody. If you never meet a woman who's attracted to you, you're meeting the wrong women. So you can improve yourself to become attractive to more women,
right?
Which is, you should also do that.
Everyone can do that, right?
But if you're never meeting women who are attracted to you, then you are meeting the wrong women on some level. So it's everybody's attracted to somebody somewhere, and if you're not finding them, then it's an issue of filtering. It's not an issue of like, oh, women just like tall guys with money, or like, oh, women, like all the bullshit that you.
The incels have this whole idea about that, but you do make a point. You can become genuinely generally more attractive
Yes.
by doing certain things. You talk about appearance. You can increase your fashion and fitness. This is something we all can improve, no matter how many eyes you have or noses you have.
It's pretty simple. Like it's not very hard. And honestly, like men have it way easier than women on that front. Like it's crazy. Like you just, I don't know, like take a shower and like fucking comb your hair and put on a decent shirt and like you're halfway there.
Yeah. And a lot of guys don't realize that. Yeah. How much they can up level themselves just by doing that. You say women are attracted to a man they can respect, to a man they can trust. If you're constantly looking for approval for what to say and how to feel, how could anyone respect or trust you? And so I think a lot of this, it just keeps coming back to that. These are simple things that I think people can listen to, tangible takeaways in their lives to be with the kind of woman they generally want to be with. But we're not doing one of these things like have sex with any model. That's not what we're here for.
Oh, that's the follow-up book.
That's the work that we're writing together.
Yeah.
No. But when you call, I think we had an interview where we're joking, but I couldn't tell if you were serious or not. When you said models, were you referring to statistical models, like a model, a way of thinking about it, or were you actually thinking about models?
It's a double entendre. So it's specifically what it is, and I believe I talk about this in the introduction, is that there's no healthy, in a post-feminist world, there's no healthy model of masculinity. That there's no, for men who grew up in the internet age, there's no clear and obvious role model. If you look at our parents' generation, they grew up with like John Wayne and, Jack Nicholson and all these people. Like it was kind of obvious of like, okay, that's what a man is. That's how I'm supposed to be. This is, what we do. Whereas growing up in, say, starting in the 90s, it started to get a lot more ambiguous and unclear. And so the goal of the book was to just present, like, here's a model of what being an attractive man is, that is based on science, and it's also practical and useful. And then the double entendres,
the nerd in me loves the double entendre. I love that. What's your own journey, personally, just at a personal level, like being vulnerable for a second as Mark Manson, like you strike me as someone who earlier in your life, you probably felt things very deeply. I actually get this sense, and I may be completely off base here, but I've been a psychologist for 25 years. I get the sense that you are this like big teddy bear who early in your life, you couldn't stand the feeling of being rejected or whatever. But you've gone through such a journey, like personally, like you've transformed and you've gone through a lot of growth. And maybe you even at some point overcompensated by being too cool, where like, oh, nothing affects me, don't give a fuck about anything, maybe you went through that phase at some point. And now you're a much more integrated human. But just being your friend and kind of knowing you, this is what my intuition is telling me about the arc of your story. How much does that dovetail with reality, what I just said?
It's funny though, like being a person who feels things deeply, like I never know, like all I know is how I feel things. So I don't know if that's deep.
What's it like for someone?
Yeah, like there's no reference point. So I don't know. Like I grew up in a very like kind of emotionally stifled family. My parents were like old school middle America. Everything's fine, don't talk about it type of family. And so, in my early life, I just buried things, just really, really buried things, and developed a number of like self-destructive patterns and behaviors at a pretty young age. And then I was also like, I was a classic entitled nice guy. Like I was every girl I wanted to date, I became friends with, and then I would feel like I got cheated out of something because she didn't want to sleep with me. And it's like, well, dude, you never said anything. It's been 6 months. You never fucking said anything. Like, so is she supposed to just magically know that like, oh, your perfect boyfriend has been here the whole time? No, it's on you to like say something. But, I was young and immature and I didn't understand that. And I think I did overcompensate when I got to my 20s. I got really into self-help. I got into Eastern spirituality, went to therapy, did a lot of psychedelics, did the whole thing, started meditating all the time. And I kind of overcompensated. I became very, I did get in touch with my emotions, but there was like a lot of anger there and a lot of like
resentment, yeah.
Resentment. And then also like a lot of selfishness came out with that. And I think it took me most of my 20s to kind of like mature out of that. And honestly, my book was very much, it was kind of towards the end of that journey. Like, I think it took me many, many years to learn how to be, like, I figured out how to attract women like relatively early, but it took me a lot of failed relationships to figure out how to like actually be a good partner and be a good man, essentially. And so when I wrote Models, like I said, I was 27, 28. And it was really, the goal of it was like, write the book that I wish I had read when I was 20. Like, what is the healthy version of the pickup artist stuff? And yeah, it's funny too, because I wrote it, I was like, this industry, I was ready to get out of that industry. I was like pretty sick of it. And I was like, well, if I'm going to leave the industry, I should like kind of leave what everybody needs to actually hear, but they're not hearing. And I was convinced that everybody was going to hate it when it came out. And they did initially hate it. I got a lot of flack in that industry for the first year or two. And then it kind of took on a life of its own. And so it's been one of the best-selling men's dating books pretty much ever since. And
it still has legs.
Yeah. It still sells.
Yeah. It's personally changed my life. So I really appreciate you writing this and resonating on a frequency I wanted to resonate on that I wasn't resonating on with the other stuff in that whole crazy world.
Yeah. In hindsight, it's funny because it's like, it's so obvious. I mean, as most things are, it's obvious in hindsight that, I was a guy, like, I was a mess in my relationships, but I also wanted to like live and act in integrity. And I like, it's so obvious to me now that there were thousands and thousands of men, like most of the men in the pickup artist space were probably in the same boat. And they were like, well, I wish I didn't have to lie and make up stories, but this is kind of all that's like in front of me. So I'm just going to go with it, so it's in hindsight, I'm not surprised. It's not surprising that there was so much demand for it. But, at the time it really felt like I was like going out on a limb and, saying some crazy stuff. So
crazy. Be honest with women.
I know, be honest, be a good human, have self-respect. I know it's it's insane. But, no, I'm very proud of the book, and it's has a very close place in my heart.
Beautiful. So in conclusion, you don't have to be an asshole to attract women.
No, you don't.
And you also don't have to be a nice guy to attract women. I think that's a conclusion from both ends. Or not. Be yourself and lean into the best parts of yourself.
I would say that the nice asshole axis is a different, or spectrum is a different axis as the attractive, unattractive axis. And
it's revolutionary.
Yeah, you can be an attractive asshole. You can be an unattractive asshole. You can be an attractive nice guy. You can be an unattractive nice guy.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.